Hello, this is Heerak Christian Kim, and I'm here to give you your interesting episode of Coronavirus Update by Heerak for April 21st, 2020. We have some very sad news today, and so we are going to talk about that a little bit later. So stay tuned. Let me start out by asking you this question. How do you feel? Do you feel happy? Do you feel sad? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel angry? How do you feel? There are different stages of grief. And most Americans are going through some stage of grief because of coronavirus. And hopefully, you're reflecting and trying to understand yourself better through this whole process. I'm going to try to help you through this show, not just today, but every day. So make sure you tune in to Coronavirus Update by Heerak every day. And I've created this show as a public service to not only my voters in Virginia's 8th district, but for everyone throughout the United States of America. I hope that you will find this show beneficial and that this show will help you survive COVID-19. It seems like we're in it for the long run. So I would encourage you to tune in every day so you don't miss anything that you need to know so they can survive COVID-19. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is survival. So subscribe to this YouTube channel and check back every day. Tell all your friends, your parents, your children, adult children, and your friends and coworkers to watch this show because that will help them. We have a very sad news today. Yesterday, the death rate went below 2,000, and we thought maybe we're in the clear. Well, some people thought we're in the clear. People were celebrating that death toll is decreasing, but it seems like the celebration was short-lived because death toll is again very high. So about 2,744 people died in the last 24 hours. So we had 42,295 total death in the United States of America yesterday. Today, it went up within the last 24 hours by 2,744 deaths. So our total today is 45,039 deaths in the United States of America. In 4 days, you'll have 10,000 people die at this rate. And I've actually shared with you that I believe that death toll will increase more, and that I'm predicting that there will be at least 1 million Americans who will die from COVID-19 by August 2020. Some experts have said that it will be around 2.2 million that they think will die. Others have kind of given a lower figure. Heerak Christian Kim, that's who I am, believes that about at least 1 million people will die by August. And the reason is death numbers are increasing, it's not decreasing. Confirmed cases is staying about the same, around 30,000 people rising. A little bit above that, a little bit below that. So yesterday we had 786,638 cases. Today we have 824,147 cases. Now You got to ask yourself, why are so many Americans dying from COVID? Yesterday, we did a show about Asia, and there are that many people dying in Asia from COVID-19. In Japan, I mentioned yesterday, 100% of the people are going to work. Their children are staying home with their grandparents. In Asia, families have grandparents living with them generally. Um, but all the adults are going to work. And you may want to see the show from yesterday. And I mentioned that Asia may become very rich through this COVID-19 because now they're getting new customers who are not being supplied by us in the United States because our factories are closed, and in Europe because their factories are closed. Now Asians um, have all these new clients that they could supply. So they're going to make their money normally that they make, and they're going to make our money. So it seems like it's going to be really bad. It's going to be worse than we thought. Because a lot of people in America were focused on the healthcare aspect, but there's a global competition aspect, and it's difficult to see how United States will survive the global competition because there's an uneven field. It's not like everybody's dying at the same rate right now. In Asia, hardly anybody's dying, so they're just having normal workday. People are working, producing stuff. So their economy has no problems. It's going to continue forward. Production is going to be good. Compared to Europe and America, we're not producing much or anything. Our economy is not collapsing. So within a year or two, you may see the world flipped. We may become the third world, and Asia, which has a lot of third world areas, may actually become quite rich. Things can change really quick. For those of you who are in business, you know how quickly things can change. I have a friend who's a millionaire. He became a millionaire and then he became bankrupt. Then he became a millionaire, then he became bankrupt. He did this 3 times. And then God called him, so he became a Christian minister. He has a church in Maryland. Um, yeah, things can happen quickly in business. Deals can make you a billionaire one day, and then you can lose it all. The next time. And so, it seems like we're kind of headed to a situation where we as a country may lose everything that we gained in the last few decades. Unfortunately, there's no vaccine in sight and there's no cure in sight. It doesn't seem like COVID-19 is going to belly up and die on its own. So it seems like we are going to see many, many more deaths. Dr. Fauci has said that there will be a second wave, which will be more deadly in the fall. Many experts actually agree with that. So we're looking at, more number of people dying in the fall. Part of the problem is people with pre-existing conditions are dying at a fairly high rate. That includes people who are overweight and people who have diabetes. And, how many Americans are not overweight, really? And a lot of people have diabetes because when you get overweight, you tend to develop diabetes. So America is in a big trouble. And that's kind of shown in the death toll. I thought it would be good to see the rankings of the states for coronavirus cases. We haven't done that in a few days, so I figured let's see where we stand. And we see that some changes have occurred. California, that was not in top 5 before, now entered top 5. So maybe the death rate in California will pick up. Pennsylvania has seen significant number of deaths recently. So it may be that Pennsylvania is headed to where New York is. It seems like the rate at which people are dying is kind of increasing in Pennsylvania. In New Jersey, obviously, it's trying to catch up to New York in terms of deaths. Right now, the most serious states may be New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York. And I guess California is kind of aggressively trying to catch up as well, and Massachusetts is pushing ahead. So I guess all 5 states are in an emergency state. We have New York be number one with 258,484 cases. Total death is at 19,114. So it's not getting better in New York. Whatever you hear from Governor Cuomo or de Blasio, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. So I don't think New Yorkers should start having hope because when you start having hope, that is exhausting emotionally because hope is good when it gets fulfilled. But in circumstances like this, when there's COVID-19 death rising and rising, and if Harvard School of Public Health is correct, this will continue for 2 more years. You know, being too optimistic or being too hopeful may be a problem emotionally because your optimism and hope can only go so far. So New Yorkers may want to take a different approach than trying to be too optimistic because you're eventually going to be thrust into to emotional instability because if you are too optimistic thinking that things are going to get better, in a sense you're kind of lying to yourself because things are not going to get better for New York because it's been steadily getting worse. So if you're trying to lie to yourself and say things are going to get better, then you may develop mental illness through that. Because denial is a problematic thing, and a lot of mental illnesses come from denial. And so people can develop mental illness trying denying the reality that people are dying and that this is continuing, maybe even getting worse, and it's not going to stop. So, I mean, optimism is good, but maybe New York is entering a phase where it's better to be realistic and somber about it rather than be hopeful because your hope is not going to be satisfied. So one of my favorite movies is Cinema Paradiso. It's an Italian film. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to see it. And there's this guy who's madly in love with this girl, Italian, teenager who falls in love for an Italian teenager who's blonde and blue-eyed and beautiful, and he's just crazy about her, and she doesn't give him the time of the day. It's like his first real love, and he kind of makes a promise to himself: I'm gonna give her 40 days, and if she, shows me a sign, then we can be boyfriend and girlfriend. But if she doesn't, I'm just gonna quit after 40 days. The reason that he does that is because human beings have limited capacity for hope, and it takes energy to have hope. So it's not a passive thing. And so when you have hope, there's a greater chance that you will have disappointment. So that's why this boy in Cinema Paradiso who really loved this girl, he said, I'm just going to give up after 40 days. Because there's only so much a person can take emotionally, psychologically, mentally. And to hope continuously for 40 days, that takes a lot of energy. And let's be honest here, New Yorkers need their energy to survive COVID. They don't need their energy for hope. So I would actually suggest that New Yorkers take a different approach, rather than being fake about it, fake optimism. That's not going to do you any good. I think New Yorkers should take a more realistic approach, admitting to themselves that they have a high chance of dying from COVID the next 2 years. If Harvard School of Public Health is correct to say it's going to continue for 2 years and social distancing was happened for 2 years, I based it on 3 factors. Number one, you're not going to lose weight, especially because now you're staying at home. So if you're overweight, chances you're going to die from COVID is very high. And with each passing day, your chance of getting COVID becomes higher, which means your chance of dying becomes higher. Because for overweight people, if you get COVID, you probably have a pretty high chance of dying. And so, if you're in New York, you could just, you could have survived COVID all along. Tomorrow you walk outside without a mask and start talking with a buddy who had COVID and die. I mean, and that could happen tomorrow. It could happen the day after that. It could happen 5 months from now. It could happen a year from now. It could happen 2 years from now. So that's why I think it may not be a good idea for you to be too fake optimistic or to have false hope, thinking that this is going to end. It's not going to end. You may survive and live through it, but there's a high chance that you will not live through it. You will die. If you're a New Yorker, because this virus is not going away. It's there. And some people were saying it's seasonal, but it doesn't look like it's seasonal, right? I think the experts who were saying that it's seasonal were wrong. I've been saying that it's not seasonal from the very beginning. Just go back to my first episode. And I disagree with Dr. Fauci way back then. I said it's not seasonal because I think people thinking that this is like a flu is I think that's upon what evidence are you basing that assessment? A lot of people are saying a lot of things without evidence. And, that's when, you got to step back and say, hey, these experts may be wrong about this. They don't know what this is. Remember when they said, don't wear a mask? If you don't have symptoms, it's better not to wear a mask. Do you remember being told that every day? Like, you should not wear a mask? I'm like, what? As you know, I'm doing my Master's of Science in Nursing at Georgetown University, due to graduate in May, in summer 2020. May was the graduation ceremony, but that's canceled because of COVID-19. But yeah, so our graduation ceremony at Georgetown was canceled. Our pinning ceremony, because when nursing graduates graduate, they have this pinning ceremony, that was canceled. So, and that's happened everywhere, all over America. But you got to remember, if all the schools are canceling graduation, you have to think, realistically about this. We're in it for the long haul. I mean, you could lie to yourself and say, hey, this is going to go away, but it's not going to go away. It's not going away. Do you see? It's not going away. And Harvard University School of Public Health said it's going to continue continuously for 2 years. I mean, are they wrong? All those experts at Harvard, are they all wrong? You see what I'm saying? I mean, and pandemics generally last years and years, like Spanish flu, 100 years ago, it lasted years, like several years. And so, I mean, you gotta expect this to continue. The moment you let your guard down, it only takes one mistake, you get COVID and you could die. So the reason why I'm encouraging New Yorkers to be realistic is because if you have false sense of hope, false sense of optimism, you may catch COVID and you may die. If many New Yorkers have fake optimism, many New Yorkers may get COVID and many New Yorkers may die. There's no limit to how many New Yorkers can die from COVID. You could have like 100,000 New Yorkers die, or you could have 10 million New Yorkers die. I mean, COVID is all there. It's already there. The difference in how many number of New Yorkers will die is based on basically what you do. So COVID is there trying to infect you. They're not going to change their ways. They may evolve to be more dangerous and more deadly. And that's happened in history. And that's what viruses generally like to do. So basically, what you do will determine whether 100,000 New Yorkers die or 10 million New Yorkers die. It's basically up to you. And one mistake is all you need to get COVID-19. And if you're overweight, there's a high chance you can die. So I would say it's better to take a sober approach and just kind of be careful, especially if in New York. Look at the statistics. There are 45,000. 39 people who died from COVID in the United States. And nearly half of that is in New York. And that's been like that since the very beginning. New York, number of deaths in New York is not decreasing. It's increasing because other states are having more people die, but still New York is 50%, which means New York number of deaths is exponentially growing. So I don't think anybody should be surprised if you have like a couple million people die just in New York at the end of 2 years or more, right? I mean, as I said, 10 million New Yorkers can die from COVID if they just let their guard down, get COVID. If they're overweight, they could all die. Yeah. I mean, especially because how is the hospital going to handle that, right? If that happens all at once. So I would say for New Yorkers, until death goes to zero, like in Asia, sometimes they have zero death per day. Until death goes to zero, I wouldn't get my hopes up just because experts are saying it's going to continue for 2 more years. Experts are saying there's going to be no vaccine for 18 months. There's never not going to be a cure for at least several years. So New Yorkers, you just have to brace yourself and resign yourself to the fact that one mistake in protecting yourself from infection, you could get it, you could die. And if you have family and relatives in New York, you should be resigned to the fact that you're probably going to see some of your relatives die, or maybe all of your relatives in New York can die. You should not be surprised if this happens. You gotta prepare yourself emotionally so you don't have a nervous breakdown. Let's say you have a mom and father in New York, and they both die from COVID next week. If you've emotionally prepared yourself, then you may survive emotionally. Like you may not commit suicide, or you may not jump off of a building or do something crazy. But if you're falsely hoping, oh, my parents are going to survive through this, oh yeah, nobody's going to die that I know in New York, that's probably not going to be the case. So when they die, you have your hope really high, it gets dashed to the floor, and you go into a state of shock. And then who knows what you do? You may kill yourself. I'm just trying to prevent unnecessary death that's like collateral to COVID. And that's why I'm saying let's kind of dial down the optimism, fake optimism, because based on what are you having fake optimism? Doesn't even make sense that you have this fake optimism because death is increasing. Scientific research says it's not going to stop for a few years. There's no cure, there's no vaccine. What are you basing your optimism on? So the reason that I'm saying, you can dial down your optimism is it's a natural process in nature that it kills, right? And that's not going to change. It's not like you're job hunting. You control most of the factors. You go to the interviews, you send your resume, you're applying for jobs. I mean, you're in control. Here, you're not in control at all. The moment that you take that mask off, just because you're sweating or whatever, you could catch it just in that fraction of a second, and they could die. And so I would say New Yorkers need to take a little bit more measured approach to this and expect to die, potentially to die, and expect, your parents to die, your children to die. When you kind of face reality, and then you can start solving problems, right? Because you know what kind of problems there are, and you need to do what you need to do to avoid these, dangerous direction in the problems. So I would say just be careful because, emotionally, you need your emotional strength to survive this as well, right? And we can't have New Yorkers committing suicide because their wife dies or when both of their parents die, So just prepare yourself mentally. I care about you. There are a lot of New Yorkers in Virginia, especially in Arlington, Alexandria, because a lot of them work for the federal government or, military or, work for a congressman or a senator. There's NGOs there, a lot of federal agencies. So I'm concerned about you New Yorkers in Virginia's 8th District, Arlington Alexandria Falls Church, Fairfax County, because I think you need to be more realistic. You have to kind of accept the fact that your parents can die. And then, you go from there. I mean, hopefully your parents won't die. I'm not saying, your parents will definitely die, but I think it's important for you to emotionally prepare so you're not traumatized when it happens, that you will do something reckless. I mean, you're probably cooped up in your room, their home. You probably miss your parents. I mean, geez, God knows what you're going to do when you hear the news that your parents are dead from COVID. And it could happen like suddenly. People are diagnosed and they die from COVID within like 1 hour of diagnosis. That happens. So, yeah, so just I would say just emotionally prepare yourself for getting the news that your parents are going to die. If your parents are in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, California, Pennsylvania, these states that are kind of hot zones, but especially like New York. If you're like big cities like Philadelphia has like growing death case. If you have parents in Philadelphia, you should kind of be ready to hear the news that your parents may get COVID and die. If you're in New Jersey, I mean, it's everywhere and it's kind of spreading really fast. So yeah, so I would say just mentally prepare yourself. Obviously, pray to Jesus and lean on Him. But even born again Christians do crazy stuff. They get traumatized. They have PTSD. So you have to kind of prepare yourself emotionally. Pray to God. And talk to God. You could say, God, I understand my parents can die. They live in New York and they have all this death in New York. But I pray that you'll give me the strength to survive and to handle it emotionally, mentally, psychologically if my parents do that. You gotta start praying that way. Because you gotta talk to God as if you actually talk to your father, Abba Father. And you gotta share your concerns and you gotta be realistic about it. You can't say, oh, nobody's gonna die. That's not gonna happen. Christians die all the time. I mean, geez, how many Christians do you know who died of cancer? Christians die. I mean, it's not like born again Christians are bulletproof. They die. And so if you have parents or grandparents in New York or New Jersey, especially in these states, be ready to get the news that your parents are dead from COVID. Because I think, you got to psychologically prepare yourself, prayerfully prepare yourself so you're not shocked when it happens. So you see the top 5 list here. And because of what's going on in New York, I thought, we need to kind of give some attention to it. So I put the title today, COVID-19 in New York, a tragic, never-ending union. And I think New Yorkers should be ready to accept the fact that they're going to have to live with this reality for at least a couple of years, at least. This is not my words. I'm just quoting Harvard University School of Public Health, which is like one of the best public health programs with public health experts in the world. They're saying it's going to continue for 2 more years. You have to social distance for 2 more years. So in New York, you should be ready for this for 2 more years. And you're going to be burying your dead every day. And I wouldn't be surprised if 10 million people die in New York in next 2 years. As I said, it's based on what you do. If you don't cover your mouth and social distance, even if you're social distancing, you could still get the virus because we don't know what the vectors are. Vectors are how virus can transmit, because bubonic plague was carried by the mice. So people hid in their homes, like they were safe at home, they thought, but mice came and mice spread the bubonic plague. So yes, it spread from people to people, and they thought if they just locked themselves in a room or in their home, they wouldn't get it, but they got it because mice carried it. So we don't know, and experts don't know. They don't even know 5% about. They don't know anything about COVID really right now. I mean, look at all the time they're changing their advice. Don't wear a mask. Wear a mask. Wear a mask every day. they don't know what they're talking about right now. I mean, obviously wearing a mask logically is safe because you're covering everything where virus could go through, although you may be able to enter through your eyeballs, maybe be able to enter through your ears. So, who knows? Experts don't know. And vectors are like mice who could carry disease or cockroaches, any kind of bugs, spiders, ants that carry, you know, disease. Virus is smaller than that, so they carry it. So we just don't know. But what I'm saying is, from a scientific perspective, it is theoretically possible for 80% of New York to be infected, and scientists do not know whether if you had the virus you could be infected again. And I had a whole episode about that a few days ago. So just watch my episodes, you'll see that. So the hepatitis C, you could get it and you could be completely cured and you could get it again. So I mean, that's a virus. So you may have had COVID-19 and you may be completely cured, but you may get it again, and that's possible. Scientists don't know whether that's possible or not. So if that is possible, 100% of New Yorkers, even including those who survived COVID in year 2009, could get it. And theoretically, 100% can die. Because you get it over and again and again and again. Get it in year 2019, get it in 2020, you could get it in 2021. I mean, we don't know what this is doing. So scientists, they're just as lost as you are about what's going to happen in the fall. I mean, we may have like 10 million Americans die in the fall. We don't know. Scientists don't know. They can't say conclusively what's going to happen in the fall. Nobody knows. And if Dr. Fauci is correct, then the second wave of big wave of coronavirus is going to be more deadly, then what do you think will happen? I mean, it's going to be more deadly than now, New York, if Dr. Fauci is correct. And so, yeah, so I would say, trust in God, pray, reconnect with God, because if you die, you don't want to spend eternity in hell, right? So you gotta follow what the Bible says you should do, follow Bible ethics, read Romans 1. That's a very important Bible passage because it talks about the wrath of God being poured out. And so, Bible passages have more relevance. Some of them have more relevance than others, depending on the time and the season, right? So I would encourage all of you to read Romans chapter 1 very carefully and meditate on it and see how that applies to you personally, how that applies to your family, how that applies to your city, how that applies to your state, how that applies to our United States of America. Because it does talk about wrath of God being poured out, and so, God sends message through the Bible. We got to catch the message, right? So that's very, very important if you want to survive. Because if you believe that God exists, I believe he exists, and that God is in control, I believe he's in control, and then he could make all this go away tomorrow. That's God. It's like God, Jesus, quelling the storm. He could rebuke the storm and kill the storm right away just by rebuking it with words. That's Jesus. Read the Gospels. It's there. So Jesus can rebuke the viruses and it will be over tomorrow. Yeah, if Jesus wants. Obviously, Jesus doesn't want that because it's continuing. So I've shared with you that I personally believe that coronavirus is a punishment by God, for the sins of the world. And so we see that in the Bible where God punishes people for their sins. I mean, if you remember, after God delivered Israelites from Egypt, Israelites built a golden calf like an idol and they worshipped it. God delivered Israelites out of Egypt from the Gentiles, and God himself killed Israelites who worshipped the golden calf for breaking the Ten Commandments. God himself killed them. So this is God. God punishes for sin, even if he delivered you from something in your life. if you stand against Romans 1, God can punish you. I mean, the way God punished the golden calf. So I personally fear God, and in the Old Testament it says fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I would encourage everybody in New York to fear God, because fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. That's what the Bible says, right? And you may not think Bible is correct, but do you want to take the chance? What if the Bible is correct? For those of you who are atheists out there, who don't believe in God or the Bible, what if the Bible is correct? Shouldn't you try to appease God? Make God happy? If the Bible is correct, then it says God punishes with disease and plagues those who sin against him. Wouldn't you want to find a way to not anger him further against you? So I would suggest New Yorkers read Romans chapter 1 very carefully, follow the instructions that's in the Bible. Um, you need everything you can get right now. You're dying every day with tragic numbers, and this is going to continue for 2 more years according to Harvard School of Public Health. We may see millions of New Yorkers die. We just don't know. That's why I'm saying read Romans chapter 1 very carefully, reflect on it, and do what God wants you to do. I think that's the way to survive. I'm going to read some headlines from the newspaper and media. First one is New York City Police Department has lost 29 members to COVID-19. That was a couple of days ago, April 19th. And look at the quote from that article. As of Saturday, 5,324 uniformed members of the NYPD, about 14.7% of the uniformed workforce, were out sick. Any one of them can die from COVID. So, the number of NYPD police officers who die from COVID may go up drastically next week. Let's see. We don't know. And obviously, only 14.7% are infected now. That means 85.3% can get infected in the future, right? I mean, NYPD, they're always outside. They can get infected. Hopefully, New York City is giving them some kind of protection, like a respirator or N95 mask to wear, so they'll be protected. Hopefully they're giving them protection, because this virus kills. And look, 29 NYPD police officers have died already. Second news article is coronavirus news. Nursing home death represent 25% of all COVID-19 fatalities in New York. And that's April 19, 2020. It was an ABC 7 New York Eyewitness News. And that's why I'm saying, if you have parents or grandparents, especially in nursing home, they're probably going to die. I mean, if they don't, great. But if they do, you should not be surprised. You should be resigned emotionally and mentally and psychologically to their death, so it doesn't take you by surprise. Yeah, I mean, nursing home, a lot of people are dying there. 25% of all death in New York. But a lot of elderly are dying, even those who are not in nursing homes, especially if they don't have the caring of their children or grandchildren, because obviously when you get sick, if you have people to take care of you, it's easier for you to get well, right? I mean, it's been that way since the beginning of time. But if you don't have your children or grandchildren at home, meeting every single need that you have when you're sick with COVID, you're probably going to die. Yeah, and maybe, part of the reason why Asians are not dying is when elderly get sick, kids and grandkids take care of them, and so they survive it. So having family together, and I've done a show about how, on the show I said, if you have a parent or grandparent living alone, bring them home, take care of them. So I've done a show several weeks ago about that. So watch that episode. See, I give you all these ways to survive COVID-19. I give you all these ways to help your parents survive COVID-19. I hope you take this advice seriously. I've shared with you how much education I've had, and I have. I'm the Leonardo da Vinci um, of 21st century. And I'm here to give you advice that's going to help you survive. And so you should probably take this advice. I've been right. Basically, everything I've said has turned out right. I said wear a mask. Now everybody's wearing a mask, right? And so I said worry about the food chain. Everybody's worrying about the food chain now. So, yeah, I mean, I'm actually kind of leading the way. I mean, I say things few days, few weeks before people even think about it, because I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of my generation. My level of thinking is interdisciplinary. I could think at multi-dimensional levels. That's why I can come out with solutions, and that's why you should vote for me for uh, Virginia 8th District. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. That's Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. I'm running against Don Beyer, who's current congressman. He's a Democrat. I'm running as an independent on November 3rd, 2020. Don Beyer has a town hall tomorrow, so call in tomorrow and ask him questions about COVID. I don't think Don Beyer is doing enough to help the residents of Virginia's 8th District with COVID. So, and I've said that several times in this show, and I've tweeted him as well. And so I share this, I have nothing to hide. Tampere is a likable guy, but I don't think he's doing enough for people during COVID. I've shared that, and you could ask him some of these questions that you may have from watching my show. Some of the advice that I gave, you could ask him about it, and see what he says. I think I'm better for the job than Don Beyer is. And so that's why I hope that you will vote for me in November 3rd, 2020, in the general elections for the office of U.S. Congressman. But yeah, so so you see, bring you all this information to help you survive. And so can you imagine how good of a leader I will be to help you and your family prosper, when I'm your congressman? Yeah. Now, look at the quote from the article. Officials say 3,425 residents of New York State nursing homes or adult care facilities have died because of COVID-19. So it's not just nursing homes, but like older adult facilities, where wealthy older adults live in a community. Those are facilities as well, right? Because they receive care in those facilities. So those are included. A lot of people are dying, and more will die. Yeah, so just be realistic about it. Come to Jesus, talk to him about it in a realistic way through prayer. None of this fake optimism. That's not gonna help you. It's not gonna save you. Only Jesus saves. I believe, and you have to be honest with Jesus. You have to be honest with yourself about yourself and about what's going on. And definitely read Romans chapter 1. I would say that's the most important Bible passage right now. Has direct relevance in terms of how God deals with people. Now, third article is New York nurses allege inadequate safety protocols in lawsuit against state hospital systems. New York Nurses Association is bringing lawsuit against the state of New York and against several hospitals because they're saying their lives are being endangered by lack of PPE. So they're blaming Governor Cuomo of New York, Mayor de Blasio of New York. I don't think they're doing good enough job right now. As I've shared with you about infection control a couple weeks ago, nurses are supposed to use their mask, their gloves, and their gown only once with one patient. As I've shared with you, I've worked at Innova Fairfax Hospital until they kind of did not want any students to come because of COVID, because they had to deal with these emergency. And also there's liability issue. If we die working at Fairfax Hospital, they don't want to get sued. So there are several issues why, hospitals don't want students there. Because if they're, hospitals don't want nursing students in their hospital, because if a nursing student gets COVID-19 and dies in that hospital, the hospital would be liable and they could be sued by the family post-mortem. Um, and that's part of the reason why hospitals don't want nursing students. But if the nurses are working in hospital as nurses, they're employees. So it's a different situation. If you die as an employee in the course of your work, you can't really sue the hospital unless the hospital is being negligent, or they're, violating some law. Now, New York nurses in New York are saying that New York is being negligent, and that's why they're suing New York, because they're endangering their lives through negligence. As I've shared before, generally nurses are supposed to use their glove, their gown, their mask only once. So when I was working at Innova Fairfax Hospital, working with patients there, I would go in, I wear my mask, my glove, and my gown, and I go in because the patient wanted me to come in. So I come in, and then the patient says, "Can you get me a glass of water?" I said, "Okay." Do you know what I have to do? I have to take off my gloves, gown, and mask, throw it all away. And I just stepped into the room, like infection control room, contact precautions room, and I have to throw it away. I was just there 1 second, 2 seconds, few seconds, and then I have to wear a brand new gown, brand new mask, brand new glove to go in with water. And when I come out, I have to throw all of that away. And that's the proper infection control? Yes. So you can see why nurses are upset. Excuse me. They think there is monkey business going on. Monkey business. But it's not really monkey business, but they think that it's the duty of the governor of New York, Cuomo, and Mayor Blasio to provide them with masks and gear to protect themselves while they save the lives of patients. So they're saying, the fact that there isn't enough PPE, that we're asked to reuse it, they're asking us to risk our lives. So that's why New York nurses are suing. Yeah. But it's going to get much worse. So psychologically, mentally prepare yourself, reconnect with Jesus. A lot of people, you have gone away from Jesus before COVID. You're busy with your work, trying to professionally advance. Maybe you're just having a lot of fun. Now, you're kind of faced with this reality that you may die. Every American can die from COVID if they get infected, and if they have pre-existing condition. Even if you don't have pre-existing conditions, you can die. It's an infection that attacks your lungs and other organs. So this is the right time to think about yourself. Who are you? What is your relationship with Jesus? If you've fallen away from Jesus, this is the right time to connect, because if you die being far away from Jesus, you're not going to spend eternity in heaven, which is a good place to be. You may end up in eternal damnation in hell, where Satan is the boss and Satan tortures people for eternity. And there's a fire that's going to burn and burn without you burning up, because every dead person will have a resurrected body to spend in heaven or hell. That's not going to burn up. So I would encourage you to reconnect with Jesus. As I've encouraged you today in this show, read Romans chapter 1 very carefully. It's probably the most important Bible chapter right now in the midst of what we're experiencing. Try to understand God's perspective. Where is God coming from? Sometimes, you can become real self-centered, and you just try to see the world from your perspective. You're trying to dictate your relationship with Jesus on your own terms. No, step back a little bit and say, Jesus, I want to hear what you have to say. And I'm going to read your word, the Bible, Romans chapter 1, and see what you're telling me. So listen to Jesus for once. Instead of just trying to assert yourself in your relationship with Jesus, let Jesus speak. Let Jesus um, kind of give you wisdom and direction. I think this is right time for you to humble yourself before Jesus. Who is God. Um, I hope that this show helps you and will continue to help you. Tune in tomorrow. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, and watch it with your adult children, your parents. Tell your coworkers to watch it. I created this show in order to help you survive, help your family survive, mentally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, socially, uh, in every way. So watch this show, and you'll find a lot of things that help you. A lot of things that help you, and this may be just what helps you survive COVID. So keep watching and be well.